Record.
Welcome then, candidates. My name is Dan Powers, and I'm the Voter Service Forum Coordinator for the League of Women Voters of Door County. This event is also sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the state of Wisconsin. This forum is for the candidates on the November 3rd ballot for Wisconsin State Assembly District 1. The first Assembly District is made up of Door and Kewaunee counties and a portion of Brown and Manitowoc counties. The candidates are Joel Kitchens, the Republican candidate, and Kim DeLoreet Jensen, the Democratic Party candidate. We want to thank both of you candidates for running for office and for agreeing to take part in this forum. Voter service is the #1 priority of the League of Women Voters. We encourage people to run for office, and we hold forums such as this one to help the voters become better informed. More information about the League and about registering to vote and absentee ballots can be found on the website for the League, which is leagueofwomenvotersdoorcounty.org, and on our Facebook page. As an organization, the League never endorses a candidate or a party. However, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our community strong. The views expressed in this forum by the candidates are not those of the League of Women Voters of Door County, nor the State League of Women Voters. Our sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement of either candidate. The candidates have agreed in advance to the format of this forum. The order of speaking will begin with the candidate who first took out filing papers, and that will be Kim DeLoreet Jensen. The order of speaking will then be rotated, assuring each candidate will alternately be first to respond. And now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for the forum, Shirley Senerigi.
Good morning.
Morning.
This session today is a forum and not a debate. The candidates will introduce themselves in 2-minute opening statements, and then candidates will be given 2 minutes to answer each of 15 questions. Each of the questions will be posed to both candidates. However, a candidate may decline to answer any question that's presented today. The questions for this online forum were submitted from League of Women Voters Door County members. Questions were screened to eliminate duplications and to eliminate those that might not have met the League's policy for forum questions. However, after the forum, all questions will be available to both candidates. Candidates, a timekeeper will signal with a chime when you have 30 seconds remaining for your response, and again when it's time to stop. Thank you for finishing your sentence, and then we'll move on. We'll ask questions for about 1 hour, and then you'll have 5 minutes during which you could go back and elaborate on any of the issues that came up during the forum and make any other final remarks to the candidates. We'll now begin the forum with each candidate making their 2-minute introductory remarks. And the first candidate to make those introductory remarks this morning is Kim DeLoreet Jensen, followed by Joel Kitchens.
Thank you, Shirley, and good morning, everybody. I'd like to first thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum. I'm Kim DeLoreet Jensen, and I'm running for Assemblywoman District 1. A little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Northeast Wisconsin. I've lived here 42 out of 51 years. I was born and raised in Green Bay, born at St. Vincent Hospital in 1969. I come from hardworking parents and a long line of entrepreneurs on both sides of my family with my grandparents. At a young age, I saw men and women of my family taking turns loving, feeding, providing, schooling all of us children, sharing duties of the household. And I understood what teamwork and sacrifices were at a young age. And I believe that's why I'm such a strong entrepreneur right now in my life. I'm running for the voice of all voters to be heard. I'm running to stop representatives from passing the buck and voting party over people. I'm running for our state to get back to passing laws that hear our voice. We need leadership that supports public education, affordable health care, protecting our environment from big business that are taking our natural resources and returning them polluted. And last but not least, a leadership that supports, again, all voter voices. I've employed over 1,000 people since starting my businesses. I've learned through working with your people and instilling pride in our work together that business can provide a future for all people. I will fight for living wages and support a pathway to a future that we all can have in our district and in our state. I will take our voices to Madison so all voters can be heard. I'm Kim DeLore Jensen. Vote for me and I'll take your voice to Madison for common sense politics and solutions for our district. Thank you.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. I'm State Representative Joel Kitchens. I'm running for my 4th term as your state representative. In my life prior to this, I was a veterinarian, large animal veterinarian. I founded Door County Veterinary Associates, which employed up to 5 veterinarians as well as support staff, and I ran that business for 30 years. My wife, Sherry, continues to operate. She's also a veterinarian. She continues to operate Peninsula Veterinary Service. We have 3 kids and 1 grandchild, another one on the way. I kind of got into politics when I ran for the Sturgeon Bay School Board at a time when they were having a lot of serious issues. I served on the school board for 14 years, 12 of those as president. And that sort of got me interested in politics. And when Gary Buys resigned, I had people come to me asking me to run. I've been very proud of what we've been able to do since I've been in the state assembly. I mean, first off, as a state, our economy prior to the pandemic was probably the strongest it's ever been in our history. On a personal level, I'm the chairman of the Environment Committee and the vice chairman of the Education Committee. And honestly, I've kind of become the go-to person in the assembly on those issues in particular. I think a lot of people go in there with great ideas. They maybe write great bills, but they don't have the ability to get them done. We've gotten some of the most important legislation I've been either authored or been a part of. So I'm very proud of what we've done. I think on the constituent services level, I'm also very proud. We take great pride in my office on being very, very responsive to our constituents. The way that the unemployment issue has been handled during the pandemic has been an unmitigated disaster in the state, and we have helped literally hundreds of people get their benefits, which they so dearly needed. We also put out e-updates every single day during the pandemic up until the point where we were no longer legally allowed to because of campaign finance issues. I'll just sum it up by saying it's been the honor of my lifetime to represent you in Madison, and I look forward to continuing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And question number 1 will first go to candidate Joel Kitchens, followed by candidate Kim DeLore Jensen. The question is, if elected, how will you represent all of the people of District 1, those who voted for your opponent, as well as those who voted for you?
Well, I think my record speaks for itself. I think that I have certainly done that. I think that everyone who runs for office, if you watch the interviews on Wisconsin Eye that all the candidates will do, every single person goes on there and says, I'm going to be bipartisan, I'm going to work across the aisle. Yet when they get in there, very few people do that. It's tough. There's a lot of pressure. I've seen, on the Democratic side, I've seen people stripped of their committee assignments when they voted with the Republican Party. So it's a very difficult thing to do. You have to be strong, and you have to know how to maneuver the system. And I think I've shown that I've done it very well. I think this summer I authored a bill with a Democrat on emergency elections procedures. And although it was too late to really get it passed, the Elections Commission ended up adopting most of the things that came out of our bill. So again, I think I have demonstrated very clearly, I think in my voting record, there's only one other assembly person, Todd Novak from Dodgeville, who has voted with, against his party's position more than I have. So we're a very divided district. It's pretty much 50-50. So in this district, if you can't work with people on the other side, you have no business being here. And again, I think that I've certainly demonstrated that I can do that.
And candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
I think it's very important to reach across. I think it's very important to, when you disagree with somebody, that you go talk to them, that you have conversations. I think that's what might be getting lost in Madison. I think we can always find solutions together, and I think we can find more that we have in common than maybe not when it comes to policy. I've been on Destination Door County boards, I've been on the EHBA, and I'm always the person, it seems, on the board that they say stirs the pot, because I'm not afraid to go over and ask opposing views, what it is that we can do to meet in the middle on. I think that it's going to be important to bring that experience to Madison, and I know that's what the voters want. That's what I'm hearing. I've been all over the district, from down in Carlton all the way up to Ellison Bay, talking to people, talking to community representatives, environmentalists, and it just seems that Madison isn't hearing the voice. We can write as many bills as we want, we can sponsor as many bills as we want, but we have to get the job done, and that's what I'm going to go to Madison to do. And I'm going to communicate with the voters when it's not going the way that we need it to be transparent and to be upfront and to speak the truth.
Question 2. What will you do to help Wisconsin's divided government come together to get more done? The first responder is candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
Well, I think we need voters to understand that we need to vote more Democrats in, so we can have a better conversation. Right now, we're stuck with a one-sided legislature, and we need to get out there in 2020 and vote to do that. I also think concentrating on fair maps would help that as well, so that candidates just don't get reelected and are able to draw the lines to favor their agenda. Government has to, again, start listening to people. We need representatives that are going to bring all voices to Madison. We cannot keep on fighting over trivial things that are not helping our healthcare, our education, our environment, our living wages. I'm an employer. I employ over 1,000 people. I work with them shoulder to shoulder every day. And I'm going to bring that voice there, the working class voice. I know what it's like, again, as a small business owner, but without my people, I'm nobody. I can't work on their backs to provide myself a future and not them. So I think this is what government has to remember, is the people, and that's who we work for. And I think there's going to be people on both sides that understand that, and I'll be looking for people with the same values there.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Shirley, would you mind repeating that again? Sorry.
I'd be happy to. What will you do to help Wisconsin's divided government come together to get more done?
Well, I think that's very closely related to the last question about working across the aisle and that kind of thing. I think that I have done probably more town hall meetings than just about anyone in the legislature, to hear all of those voices and to bring those voices to Madison. So I think that we lead by example, and I certainly believe that I have done that. I think that, for instance, and I'm sure we'll get into environmental issues, but my philosophy has been to bring those two sides together, get the farmers involved, get the environmentalists involved. And I think we've accomplished a great deal by doing that. And I've been honored by numerous groups that typically don't support Republican candidate or Republican legislators. So again, I think that I've certainly demonstrated that I can work with both sides, and I think that we need to bring all the sides in on an issue. There are too many lobbyists and special interest groups that only want to hear one side of it. And I think it's very important that we get both sides together and work out compromise solutions.
Thank you. And let me just say to both of you, I'm happy to repeat any question at any time, okay? The next question then has to do with broadband. Working from home and virtual schooling has exposed the lack of quality broadband in our area. what will you do to help encourage expansion of quality yet affordable broadband in the 1st Assembly District? And candidate Joel Kitchens is the first to respond.
Well, obviously, broadband is vitally important to economic expansion, especially in rural districts like our own. And I have been strongly supportive of those efforts to increase the broadband in the state. This past session, I advocated for greatly increasing the amount that we put into grants, because the problem is that in these rural areas there are just not enough subscribers for the free market system to work and to get broadband to those areas without help from the government, without those grants. So we put 48 million into the budget this last time, which prior to that I think it had been 20 million to meet those grants. I met with the Wisconsin State Telecommunications Association. Their board of directors invited me to speak to them a few weeks ago and to thank me for that support. And they said that 48 million was really about the right amount. That's the amount that they can sort of deal with at this time, and we want to continue to do that. Again, the pandemic has shown how important broadband is. I think that our area, we've seen it in Sturgeon Bay because we do have good broadband. I became familiar with a family that moved from California because now that with the pandemic they realized that they can work from home. So why not live in a really nice area, but you have to have that broadband. So Sturgeon Bay at this point has an advantage over probably the rest of the county. There are many areas that don't have great broadband, but we've made good progress. We're certainly not where we need to be, and Door County in particular has its special challenges with the bluffs and that kind of thing. But we're on the right track, and I'm going to strongly support it every step of the way.
And candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
I think that more money is needed for broadband, as we need to hit this straight on and treat it as a utility. Broadband can't be a luxury anymore. It needs to be a necessity. Governor Evers asked for $78 million, and the Republican-led legislature, decreased that by 30 million. There's more. We need more than 48 million. I've been talking to DCED, Steve Jenkins. I've reached across the state to other rural areas that they're all seeing that we need this to be looked at as a long-term solution. Grant money, it just isn't enough. It's not going to stop the monopoly that's happening to make it affordable. We need to start talking to We Energy, WPS, to come up with a better solution for fiber optics, not just broadband. It's sad to me that we think Sturgeon Bay's the only place we can put people that need broadband, that need to run their businesses. We have people throughout the area. Me as an example, I'm sitting right next to my router in one corner of my house because that's the only place I can get it, and I live right up on Highway 42. We can't ask people to build $12,000 towers so that they can have broadband. Again, it becomes a luxury, not something that's essential and necessary. COVID is something that should be opening our representatives at the state level to see how much it's affecting us, how much we're not able to attract the right workforce. We have an aging population up here. How are we going to do telehealth if we can't get them broadband? We need to stop this patchwork type of solution, and we need to get to business and make this a utility and find the funding for it. If we can fund big companies like Foxconn, we can find the money to do this. I think it's a necessity and it has to get done.
Question 4. And the first person to respond will be candidate Kim DeLore Jensen. Many experts say developing and implementing renewable energy presents an enormous opportunity to grow jobs and the economy. Do you agree? And if so, how would you make Wisconsin a national leader in this effort? Candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
Wisconsin for many years was looked up to for, I think, environmental standards, and we've seen us slip down in the last 20 years. I'm proud to be a part of Egg Harbor. We're a green tier community, so we are doing the right things. Our municipality has been great at finding us the funds to help with solar, to help with LED, just to make our space better drainage, better, green space for our community. I think that it's necessary. It's going to bring jobs, and this is what, again, our younger generation has at the forefront of their mind. They know that climate change is real, that it's not a hoax, that it's going to get cooler. they don't appreciate our representatives, our president laughing at people who have this knowledge and dismissing their comments. There's a lot of things we can't explain away right now, and this is definitely a way to attracting jobs to Wisconsin. Again, we have to make sure that we have the right infrastructure with broadband. We need to make sure that we're having living wages that support our housing market to get people here so that they can get to work on this. This is the way of the future, and we just can't put our head in the sands anymore about it. We have to make sure that across the board, farmers, small businesses are really being conscious of our environment and that the resources we take out are being put back in, not polluted.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Well, I do believe climate change is real. I think, there's a lot of controversy, of course, over what we can and should be doing to address that, but I certainly don't deny that it's real. I think that that renewable energy certainly does present a lot of opportunity, and I think Wisconsin is doing a lot with it. There's a very large solar farm that has just opened in the very southern portion of this district in Manitowoc County, and along in southern Wisconsin, efforts are being taken to do that as well. So I think Wisconsin actually is doing a good job of that, but we need to continue, and I will certainly support those efforts.
Question 5. In your view, what is the best way to balance the critical issue of groundwater contamination in the escarpment with the business needs and with economic growth? Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Yeah, I think this has been one of the most important issues that I have dealt with since I've been in the legislature, and it's taken up an inordinate amount of my time. Obviously, we've had issues in our area. In Kewaunee County in particular, it became sort of the poster child for groundwater contamination. But an awful lot has been done, and my approach has always been, we need to bring the farmers into this. We can't just, point fingers and regulate them, because, right now we have groups like Peninsula Pride Farms that are doing some very innovative things and trying new strategies to address the groundwater problem, and we need to encourage that. And I have written bills that provide grants to groups like that. We wrote new groundwater or manure spreading rules specific to Northeast Wisconsin, which is what people have been asking for a long, long time, that we needed rules that were specific to this area because we are so different from the rest of the state. And I was a part of getting that done, and we now do have specific rules, but it has been in working with the farmers. That has been what has been effective. I was in Brussels Township the other day and spoke with a gentleman. He was a water activist. His well had been contaminated. He went to every single meeting when the committee was meeting to write those rules. And he told me, he said, I was pretty skeptical when you first got elected because I knew some of the local farmers liked you. He said, but you've done a hell of a job. And he said that the job that the farmers around us are doing right now is so much better than it was a few years ago. And again, that goes back to that strategy of working with the farmers and having their support. And I think that's where my background as a veterinarian and working with the farmers, it gives me credibility with them. So I've been able to bring them on board in addressing these issues because, the agriculture industry in Wisconsin puts more into the economy than both manufacturing and tourism put together. We need to support agriculture. But so we need to work with them. That's my strategy on it.
Candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
Groundwater is definitely a problem for our southern district in District 1, and it is more than just our district. It's happening in the Central Sands now, and especially over in the western part of the state. Again, I've reached out to many representatives in these areas, environmentalists, and I've met with Don Niles of Peninsula Pride just to see, from his account what we're doing to make things better for people in Kewaunee County. My opponent has had 6 years to fix this problem, and we aren't getting much action there. I believe this is the reason why one of his endorsers, Conservation Voters, dropped him and gave me the endorsement. And I also secured Sierra Club, as they know I'm serious about this matter. We need to make sure that we level the playing field for big farmers and small farmers, I think, to get to the bottom of this discussion. We need to make sure that we are funding the DNR, not defunding them, and putting science back where it needs to be so they can get into this conversation. We know that if we don't have clean water, it's going to affect more than just ag in our district. Tourism depends on this either. We need to be able to drink, swim, and fish in our waters. And we've seen, again, over the last 10 years, we've had local activists, environmentalists working with communities to come up with solutions, and we're just not getting there. We can't keep on being proud of sponsoring bills, writing bills that keep on sitting on desks and not getting action. I really am not very impressed with the new manure bill that was passed. We're just shifting pollutants between districts here. We're not getting down to the problem, and we need to start facing it and have real discussions and find real solutions.
Well, the next question, I think, relates to the last question, but maybe is more specific. Are you in favor of or against the continued permitting of large-scale CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, in Northeast Wisconsin? And the first to respond is candidate Kim DeLoretti Jensen.
Again, you know, I was lucky enough to go visit. I reached out to all of the CAFO operators in the Kewaunee district, and Don was gracious enough to have me. He runs a great facility, he runs a great company. But bottom line, our CARS does not support CAFOs. We cannot allow manure to keep on being spread. We need to find better ways to compost our manure, maybe aerate it. It'll cost more money, but as much money as we're throwing at digesters and other solutions, I think environmentalists will agree that just by changing a few farming practices, we can get there. I think we cannot allow CAFOs to expand. I think we need to stop them where they're at right now. And again, we have to level the playing field. CAFOs right now are taking advantage of a 1980s farm bill. Their operations are nothing like small farmers. And if we want to get back to community in Kewaunee County, we need to make sure that we bring small farmers back into the mix, because those are the people that support your community. They're going to keep our restaurants, our stores, even our manufacturing's going, because they support community, they move in, and they spend money in our community. There are plenty of studies to show that when we bring in farmers, when we bring in industry, it's going to support your communities. We need to make sure that CAFOs are at least testing their water. I'm a restaurateur. I cannot open my doors if my water doesn't test well. They have to definitely take action there. We know with COVID, people have to be able to sanitize, cook dinner for their kids that are being homeschooled. And right now we have people in our district that can't do that. It's an atrocity. And again, Joel's had 6 years and we really haven't got much movement here.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Okay, first off, small farms did not go out of business in this area because they were forced out by the large farms. They went out of business, and this was my life for 30 years working with farmers and almost all small farmers. They went out of business because where do you find young people that are willing to work 80 hours a week, 365 days a year for a very modest living? So like every other industry, there has been a natural, have naturally gotten bigger. We used to go to the butcher, to the meat store, to, you know, and I meant to say butcher, the bakery, all these different little stores. Now we go to the supermarket. That's just been the natural progression of things. And I don't like it. I'm nostalgic for the small farms as well, but these businesses take advantage of the economics of size. So it doesn't really matter how big the farm is when it comes to manure. It matters how many cows per acre that you have. So a farm that has 1,000 cows but farms 5,000 acres has less impact than a farm that has 50 cows and only farms 100 acres. It's the amount that you put on every single field that is important. And the large farms do have much stricter standards environmentally than the small farms do. So I'm not saying that I don't favor large farms. Again, I made my career on small farms and I love the small farms, but we're never going to go back to that. And the important thing is that we watch very carefully how much manure goes on every single field. I want to point out that Kim pointed out her endorsements of Sierra Club and Conservation Voters. The Conservation Voters, both of those clubs, you know, hate to burst their bubble, but they endorse every single Democratic candidate across the state. The Conservation Voters used to try to be bipartisan, and Rob Coles and I were the last two Republicans they endorsed, but now they've completely dropped it. On the national level as well, they used to support Republicans, now it's entirely Democratic. So it's no great honor for a Democrat to be endorsed by those groups. I've been endorsed by Clean Wisconsin. I've worked with many of the groups that are willing to work in a bipartisan way. And to say that nothing has been done in this area because it's been 6 years, this is a problem that's been going on for easily 100 years. There is evidence of manure contamination in wells from 100 years ago. And we have made great strides. When those issues came up in Southeast Wisconsin this past year and it became evident, this is a problem all over the place. It's just that we know it's a problem. It's been documented better here. But when it came up in Southeast Wisconsin, the first thing they did was call Kewaunee County and say, wow, what did you guys do? How have you made such great progress? So this idea that nothing has happened is silly.
Joel, I'm gonna have to stop
County
you
is now
there.
seen as a model for what can be done.
We'll move on to question 7. The issue of police violence, especially against persons of color, is front and center in Wisconsin. Do you believe that policing needs to be reformed? And if so, how? Representative candidate Joel Kitchens.
Certainly we need to be looking at that. You know, our police departments are primarily run on a local level, but I think we need to have basic guidelines. I think that when we see things, you know, like what happened in Minneapolis, that was, I think, outrageous, and every moral person should have been totally shocked by that. But it wasn't really a failure of the laws. It was a failure of that police department to put good people in place and to monitor them and make sure they were doing the right things. But I'm very open to looking at all of these things. Governor Evers wanted us to come into a special session and act on several bills to deal with that. The problem with that is when we do a special session, floor sessions are meant for passing bills. It's not where we sit down and work out compromises. And go into a special session, that completely bypasses the normal process where we have public hearings and we're able to work out compromises, hear from all sides. So on things like, for instance, the no-knock warrants, banning those, I think I'm very interested in looking at that, but I'm not comfortable voting on that without talking to the law enforcement. I suspect to go knock on the door politely of a gang house to issue a warrant could be putting police lives in danger. So these are issues that they do have life or death consequences. So I want to look at all sides of it. You know, this is an issue that, you know, I do take very personally. My daughter's engaged to a black man, so very likely my grandchildren will be dealing with this issue. But it's much bigger than just law enforcement. And I think the task force that the speaker has called for to look at these issues in a more holistic manner is going to be much more effective than just rushing something through to say that we did something.
Candidate Kim DeLorte Jensen.
We can't devalue the word defunding. Defunding is what certain demographics of our nation, of our state, of our district feel. They're suppressed. These are the people that do find themselves in these situations that the majority of us don't. It's definitely overwhelming right now, and we have to really dig into this. I think this question, the issue of police violence. Your grandchildren, Joel, are going to be talked to differently. I have friends who are African American, and their young son doesn't play with guns. Their daughters have been pulled over. They have been having to teach them things that, as a white privileged person, we would never have to have discussions like this with our children. I have reached out to Matt Josky, Arlie Porter, our sheriff here in Door County. We, I think, are in an area that, yes, we do know most of our neighbors. We're very, again, fortunate for that. But with who I employ, which are a lot of Hispanics, they get profiled. We have a problem with the way we see people in our society. We need to make sure that police departments are being funded in education and understanding the culture around them. Because like Joel said, each district's different. If you're in a gang area, then, you know, I hope that they're training police officers to know the language, to know the community leaders there. And I think it's really important to put money where community leaders are, and again, somehow get them involved, possibly in calls to areas of our districts that are redlined, and we have this culture difference in policing and communication. It's a sad situation. I think there's many ways to direct money to help with this. And I think another important area would be for the mental health services. We see this getting cut, and this is where it would really help our police departments to help in these situations as well, just to make sure we're all understanding each other and getting people that need the help the money they need to have well-rounded lives.
And question 8. During a time of racial tension in our state, what are your thoughts on segregation, racism, and racial inequality in Wisconsin? Candidate Kim DeLorean Jensen.
COVID is really showing us, I think, the difference again through our inequality, our racism here in Wisconsin. It's sad to know that, you know, Milwaukee is a red line district and is one of the top players in our nation for segregation. We need to, again, talk to our neighbors, open up the conversation, understand what different cultures, different colors, different people that identify with who they are and what they believe in. We need to understand everybody's voice. This is important. And again, many endorsements that I've been given, I don't think people just get endorsements. I have had many, many, many phone calls and video conferences with the people that are endorsing us. And this is definitely a topic of conversation, especially with our younger generation. And we can't think that the younger generation doesn't have anything to talk about this. They have the experience. They're growing up with a more accepting, I think, you know, a more accepting view of what they want our nation to be. So we need to make sure that we look this straight in the face. We need to make sure, again, that even though Joel has said that we've had great economic strides, of the jobs that we had, 62% of them are not living wages. That's not acceptable. It has to stop happening. And being a businesswoman that does employ people, I know that a $20 living wage is what we have to strive for. And I really look to small business owners, large business owners, to start putting their money back into their people, because we know that when people can afford housing, when they can afford healthcare, education, that's going to stop this segregation and this racism and this inequality in Wisconsin.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Wisconsin has, you know, the record is bad for Wisconsin. We have the greatest gap in the entire country between whites and blacks. You know, and that's not just income, it's healthcare, it's a variety of things. At one time, Milwaukee was sort of a role model for the country in having a very strong black middle class. But when the Rust Belt jobs left, there were no jobs left, you know, family supporting jobs left in Milwaukee, and we've done very, very poorly with that. Honestly, that was the reason I supported the Foxconn development, because we need to transform that economy in Milwaukee into what Minneapolis has, for instance, where they have a much more high-tech, you know, 21st century economy up there. We can't just rely on those old jobs. I think really the key to it all, though, is education, and we don't do very well, you know, in Milwaukee. Our African American students just do not perform anywhere near as well as our white students do. And I mean, if there's one thing that keeps me awake at night, is that gap, and that we have this generational poverty and all the social problems that go with that, and we need to break that cycle. But it's not as simple as just giving people money and putting a Band-Aid on it that way, because that just creates more dependence on government. I think it's about creating, you know, and encouraging the creation of good jobs in Milwaukee in particular. And then it's also that education factor that that's going to be the key to breaking that cycle of generational poverty.
Thank you. We're off to question 9. We're over halfway, folks. Thank you for your diligence here. Question 9. On the November 3rd ballot, Door County voters have the opportunity to express their opinion on an advisory referendum. Should the Wisconsin legislature create a nonpartisan procedure for the preparation of legislative and congressional district plans and maps? What is your opinion on the subject? Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Well, I supported the bill that called for a nonpartisan method of drawing our maps. You know, I think that it has to be done properly. We can't turn it into gerrymandering in reverse to try to make all of the districts competitive. What we need to do is keep municipalities together. Door County, for instance, we have common concerns and that kind of thing. So you want to keep. Our district will never be gerrymandered, obviously, with a peninsula. So it's maybe a bad example in that regard. But we can't split these areas of influence sort of up like that. So whatever procedure we come up with, it needs to respect those municipal boundaries. The Iowa model is the one that is tossed about most frequently, that seems to be relatively successful. So I think it can be done. There's always concern about nonpartisan commissions, because I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of nonpartisan people. So, but I do think that it's possible. That being said, though, I think that the effect of gerrymandering on the legislature and the composition of the legislature is greatly exaggerated, and that's just because of the density of the voters of the two parties. Dane and Milwaukee counties are extremely concentrated with Democrats. 80% of the people are Democratic in those two counties, and the rest of the state leans Republicans slightly anyway. So I think because of that, you can't expect that just because Democrats get 50% of the votes, they're going to get 50% of the seats. It just naturally favors Republicans right now, and that may change. So I do think that the issue is greatly exaggerated. I think a nonpartisan commission would maybe make a difference of a couple of seats, but I do think that the people of Wisconsin have sort of lost faith in the system, and they do believe that it's fixed. And I think by doing a nonpartisan method of doing this, we would return some of the credibility to the state. And I think that's important. I think that the voters need to feel like their vote counts, that they are being fairly represented, and that kind of thing, which is why I support it. And I'm sure that in that referendum, it'll pass with 75%, because on the surface, when you don't dig into it, everybody understands that, but it's just not as easy as it maybe sounds.
And candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
I do believe there are nonpartisan people out there that would be able to get us to an Iowa model. There's a model out there that we can use. It works, and I think we need to move to that path. 51 out of 72 counties in Wisconsin want fair maps, and again, our legislature is not listening. It's there. We have the statistics. It's out there. You can look it up on the internet. We need representation in Madison that hears what majority of voters want, not what their party wants. We have a model, like I said, to follow. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We can follow that model with our neighbors next door here to the west. I grew up in a state, once that preserved democracy, and I just really feel we've lost our way by stealing elections on both sides. It's just inconceivable to me. Both sides are wrong. We need fair maps. I know I would not want to be in a contest that's stacked against me. And I know that's what's happening now. I mean, the way the gerrymandering happened around UWGB in the southwestern part of our district, it's happening right here in our district. I don't think that representatives have to listen to their voters when they know that they're going to get in. And this is the problem. We can't let people stay in their positions that are not listening to voters, that are not listening to all voters. And I think with fair maps, this is what it'll improve on. Let's restore, our tainted political system to ensure we have participations from all walks of life. We want to make sure our vote counts. And again, I do believe that this is the path to that, and restoring people's faith in politics. We have a lot of young people who don't want to get involved because they see this decisiveness, all this emotion around politics. If we make it back to a vote counts for a vote, it's voter suppression is not happening. We can get there. I'm positive of it.
And our 10th question this morning: will you support and vote for a non-binding referendum to be placed on a future ballot, asking Wisconsin voters if they support a constitutional amendment to overturn parts of the Supreme Court ruling known as Citizens United, which allows for large amounts of unregulated money in elections? Candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
Yes, I will support this. I don't think we need to talk about it too much. Again, politics shouldn't be about money. It should be about people. All that money could be put back into people. A lot of people that are spending this money for elections could be putting that back into the workforce. We know it's coming from business owners on both sides, and I think it's just atrocious. I mean, look what's happening to our beautiful signs that everybody's making. They're getting torn down. It's just causing more decisiveness. You can see the difference in both political parties. There's more money in one than the other. I think it has to stop. And again, if we want young people to participate in this great nation, in our democracy, we have to stop the spending that's happening. It's embarrassing. This money could be doing great things instead of getting people elected for one side or the other. We need a vote for a vote, and we need money to go, again, towards the important things here in our nation, because I think if we don't make a change now in 2020 on November 3rd, the next 20 years are not going to get much better.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Well, Kim's certainly right that there's more money in one party than the other this election, but we Republicans are working hard to get, our message out there in spite of the huge advantage in money that the Democrats have. I think that I think we all want less money in politics. None of us like being bombarded with these ads and that kind of thing. It's just how we go about it, about getting there. And make no mistake that both parties want money limited that benefits the other party, but not their own. I mean, the Democrats, they want to limit it on corporations, for instance, but they don't want to limit the money that comes in from unions. So I think that if we can come up with a fair system of doing that, of limiting money, I think that we all want that. So yes, I would be supportive if it's done in a fair way. And I know this is Dan Powers. He's on this meeting with the League of Women Voters, and I'm sure this was his question. But I think it is important. It's something that everyone wants, but it's pretty tough to get there.
And question 11, healthcare. What are your ideas for creating opportunities to expand healthcare in Wisconsin, especially to those who have lost their insurance due to COVID? Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Okay, this is a very complicated question, and it's going to end up with the question of whether Wisconsin should accept Medicaid expansion. I think that anyone that tells you that accepting Medicaid expansion is free money, and Kim says this, does not understand the issue. The way Medicaid works is it's run by state governments, and traditionally the federal government reimbursed about 40% of the cost of that. When they did the expansion, they said that if you will go up to 138% of the poverty level, the federal government will pay for all of it. Wisconsin currently has Medicaid that goes up to 100% of the poverty level, which is about $17,000 a year for a single person. Most states did not have that. Some of them had as little as going up to 25% of the poverty level. So when they accepted Medicaid expansion, it brought in a lot of money, and there were people. The other thing that goes into this is people that are above 100% of the poverty level, but are still sort of the working poor, are eligible for very highly subsidized insurance on the Medicaid exchange or the Obamacare exchange. So in Wisconsin, we cover up to 100% with Medicaid, and above that, they can get it through the exchange. So we don't have any gap of people that just have no access whatsoever. So for those states, when they accepted Medicaid expansion, it was great for them because their insurance rates went down because the hospitals didn't have to eat the cost of all those people that had no coverage whatsoever. That's not the case in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, if we can accept expansion, our insurance rates will go up. There was a study from the University of Wisconsin-Madison that said they would go up by $600 million if we, our insurance rates, if we accept expansion. And we would gain about, $250 million from the federal government through the expansion. So it's not free money when we're losing more than what we are gaining. So I don't think that that's the answer. Wisconsin ranks right now as one of the top 10 states in the percentage of people that are covered in our healthcare outcomes, which is, one of the other things that needs to be considered in this. With that,
Joel, I'm going to have to stop you there. Sorry.
Well, okay. I just have to say though that this is such a complicated issue that I really hate this 2-minute thing, because it's easy to say it's free money and end it at that. But anyway, I'll let it go.
Thank you. Candidate Kim DeLorean Jensen.
Well, I don't think it's complicated. Medicaid is funded by my tax dollars and your tax dollars, so we should be able to accept it. I don't know who Joel thinks is going to fit the bill when they can't pay for health insurance. It's going to come down on me, middle class. Our insurance is going to go up no matter what. But this money has been paid in by us, and we should accept it. We have, red states accepting the money, so I'm not quite sure why we aren't. There are solutions. I didn't hear one solution that Joel even brought up there. It's not all about Medicare. That's just one piece. Again, we need representatives that aren't going to keep on re-talking this topic over and over again in committee after committee. We have to come up with solutions. Public option is a great way to go. We know that people are losing their jobs during COVID, so their insurance isn't going with them. I talked to a gentleman in our own district here who lost his job, was on Badger Care a month later, and then he found out he had a brain tumor. These are the people that we're talking about. It's not just the underprivileged people that deserve health care, it's everyone. I think an individual mandate, if we could get that back, would be important. I don't understand why we have to have a license to drive a car. We have to have insurance before we can purchase a home, but you know, when we're 18 and considered an adult, we can walk out and not have insurance. We know young people will keep our premiums low, and we have to look back at that, I think. I'm looking for legislature, like in my business, that keep profit margins in check. We need to make sure that health, insurance, pharmaceuticals keep their profit margins in line. We're seeing a gross overuse of corporate America gutting our healthcare system, and we need to stop it.
In your view, what should the legislature do to support small businesses in the state that are struggling now because of COVID?
I think, I'm sorry, I thought I was first.
You are.
It is. Yeah. Candidate Kim DeLore-Jensen.
Sorry. I think for me, the funding has been great. It was a little cumbersome. I'm lucky that I have the DCED and the NWTC system that was able to help me. I've worked with them on several projects, and they were able to help me to muddle through everything with all 5 of my businesses. What really is concerning me right now is what's going to happen in the next 6 months. As we know, Wisconsin has, in our top 12 tax earners, 3 tourism areas. So we've been doing pretty good this summer with business, but I don't know what's going to happen this winter. I think it's going to be a totally different conversation. As far as statewide, people that are more on a 12-month business plan, I think we're going to have to look to the government to help fund some of these things. And how they can help fund, again, are these low interest loans, grant money like the PPP that helps us keep people engaged and employed while we're working through this situation. I don't think this is going away. I'm hoping May 1st by next year, we're kind of back to a normalcy that we used to know. It's never going to be the same, but I think that's how government can help. They also can help small businesses by enabling us to afford health insurance and to come up again with a public option that helps people stay insured during times like these and keep them employed by grant money and low interest loans.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
Well, many of these things can only really be handled by the federal government. Kim likes to mention the public option for health insurance, but that's not something we can do on the state level. And we can't put out, you know, I've heard her criticize us for not coming in and doing more for people during the pandemic. The way our budget works, we don't have the ability like the federal government just to print money and to borrow into the future on that. We just can't do that. We have a budget that was set up on the biennium, and we have to live within that budget. So we don't have money available. The federal government did, through the CARES Act, give us $2 billion, but the governor has complete control over that. The legislature has no say in that, and I think it has been very effective. I think that our economy is doing, you know, amazingly well considering what we have been through, and I think that the revenues for our state, the tax revenues, are going to be are actually, again, far better than what we thought they might be. We've created a very good business climate in Wisconsin over the last 10 years. We used to be consistently ranked as one of the very worst, and now we're up there in the top half. So I think we need to stay the course with that. You know, I've seen in her ad yesterday, Kim said that corporations are not paying their fair share. Well, 32 other states have lower corporate tax rates than us. If we raise our tax rates, those corporations will leave. We need a good business atmosphere here, which again, we've created, not just for corporations, but and also remember that corporations are not just big businesses. My veterinary practice was a corporation. So, you know, I think that we need to stick to what we have been doing in creating that great business atmosphere going into the future. And I think we're going to bounce back very, very quickly when this is brought under control.
The 13th question. How should the state make up for the cost and lost revenues during COVID-19? And how should the legislature support building a post-COVID economy? Candidate Joel Kitchens.
You know, as I just said, I think our economy is going to bounce back very quickly. One thing that needs to be understood, because again, I've seen Kim's criticism on this, that we should be in there working on the budget. We write a budget every 2 years. We can only go back to work on that if the governor calls us to do that. That's the way the process works, that then we can do a budget repair bill. We initially thought that it was going to be that we were going to have to do some pretty drastic cuts. And I'm particularly worried about education, especially in the middle of a year like this, when budgets are already set. Do we then have to go back to and tell them, no, sorry, you don't have that much money? I think at this point, the way the numbers look, we are not going to have to do that. Certainly not this year for education. At least if we need to, you know, adjust it downward somewhat, it'll be in the next budget where schools will be able to plan for it. But I'm optimistic that we won't have to do that at all, and we can continue to increase our funding for education. So, you know, I think that we are poised. We have built this very, very good business climate in Wisconsin. And as long as we don't screw that up and make it tougher on businesses, we've attracted a lot of businesses from surrounding states over the last 10 years. As long as we continue to do that, I think our economy is going to come back very strongly.
Candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
I hope Joel's prediction is right, but like I said, I think in the last quarter of the year, we're going to see in our tourism areas that we might struggle a little bit more. And I do want to make sure that when I get into the legislature, that we're not cutting education and healthcare. Those seem to be the ones that always get cut first. We know that we are going to have to make up for some of this cost. Governor Evers has talked about a gas tax. I think that's a short-term solution, but I really think that road tolling might be the way of getting revenue into the state. I think that's a great long-term solution. As again, I like to say, you know, 3 of your top 3 tax earners are tourism. We have people coming in the state in droves supporting our tax base. So I think road tolls might be a path there. Education will get cut, health will get cut first. I mean, that's just how our government's been working, and we need to make sure to protect them from that. And I think, again, we need to come up with solutions. And I do think that you need to get back to work. We have teachers that went back to work without pay to check out their budget and figure out how to get kids back into school the right way. And that's what our legislation should be doing. You can't change the budget, but we can start talking about the budget before it's too late.
Question 14. Do you support raising Wisconsin's minimum wage? If so, what should it be? Candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
Yes, we should raise the minimum wage. I've already been paying my people $15 and more in my businesses for many years. We need to support a living wage. We are having a housing shortage in Door County. It's not just as much as we don't have it, but that the wage that we're paying people in our state, they can't afford to own a home where they live. We need to make sure that we support people in wage through small business, through corporate business. Yes, before Joel was talking about tax breaks for corporations, but when I'm talking about fair share, I just think that corporate America, as well as small business people, they need to start paying people what they need to live in our communities. I know that's a big ask, but I know that when I raise wage, that I have to raise the cost of my commerce. I mean, that's just the way it is. My cost of goods go up. I think we really have to look to the business owners of America to make sure this is happening and have a better voice at the state level. And that's where I think I'm going to be very strong when I get elected, is to make sure that we're having these conversations. When we support our working class, we're supporting our communities, we're supporting our tax revenue base for the state. That's where it starts, and that's where we need to have conversation.
Candidate Joel Kitchens.
You know, because we've built such a strong economy in Wisconsin, the minimum wage has been really irrelevant. I don't know of a minimum wage job in Wisconsin. The Congressional Budget Office showed that if we raised the minimum wage to $15, there would be 1.3 million less jobs in the country, because large businesses would find ways to automate. Smaller businesses would cut back on hours for people. In Seattle, when they raised their wage to minimum wage to $15. We saw that that what businesses did was that they cut the hours on workers, so workers overall ended up making less money than they did with the lower minimum wage. So I certainly want working people to make a living wage to be able to thrive, but I think it would be better done by an earned income tax credit, where if you earned less than that amount, you would get a tax credit to bring you up to that amount, because then you have people working. What we don't want is to raise the minimum wage to a level, and Kim mentioned $20, which would have a serious impact on our economy. We don't want to raise it up to a level where they lose their jobs, and then we end up with more people that are dependent on government, which again feeds into that whole cycle of generational poverty. That is the last thing that we want. So a modest raise in minimum wage is fine, but also remember that young people in their first jobs, they don't need to make a living wage. They don't need to support a family. And I think we need to be really, really careful in how we do this, because we can really derail our economy if we raise that minimum wage to the point where people are losing their jobs and they're going on, on public assistance.
Well, it will be the last question now before closing comments. Question 15. Would you support the Wisconsin Marriage and Family Equality Act, which ensures that in a legally recognized marriage, opposite or same sex, there can be no limits on either partner's matrimonial rights based on gender? Why or why not? Candidate Joel Kitchens.
I have always been supportive of, the LGBTQ community, and I certainly think that they deserve the same rights as, as heterosexual couples deserve. So yeah, I would be supportive of assuring that they do have those rights.
Candidate Kim DeLore Jensen.
LGBT community is very important. They are part of our community. They're our neighbors. They're our friends. They're our family. They deserve the same rights as the rest of us in healthcare, in marriage rights, and in purchasing homes. They need the same rights. They need the same pathway that we have to a future with our partners. It doesn't matter who your partner is. I invite people to look into Joel's record there, as he and another representative voted down recognizing LGBT communities for a month of LGBT acknowledgement. So I just want to be clear that we are supporting in all ways that we can for all of our community and all of our voters. And this for sure is something that I stand behind and always have through my whole life. They need the same support, the same equalities. I do agree.
Well, this is our time now for closing remarks. And I want to remind you both, Kim and Joel, that this now is your opportunity to go back to any additional comments that you want to make about any of the questions that were asked this morning, as well as make any final statements to the viewing public. And we will begin closing remarks with Kim DeLore Jensen.
Well, again, I'd like to thank the Women League of Voters for having this forum. It's great to get people out there information about how Joel and I are running and what we think is important for our state and our district at this time. I can't tell you how much that this process has humbled me. I went from sitting in front of my TV in March wanting to throw my TV out to getting involved and doing something about it. And that's one thing I've been talking to voters throughout our district about is, if you're feeling frustrated, use your words, get involved, get on a board, both sides. We need to keep on having this conversation and stay off Twitter and Facebook. Have conversations with your neighbors. I think we have a lot more, like I said, in common than we don't. It's policy, but we can all get there. I have their experience from working for people over the last 20 years in our district. I believe I really have my thumb on what people need. With that being said, reaching out to activists, to, again, our law enforcement, to community leaders, it's much more than working class for District 1. There's many manufacturers, construction, small business, large business that, makes up this great district. And we need to make sure that we really are coming up with solutions that are able to sustain our communities and support healthcare, a living wage, education, and our environment. I've lived in Wisconsin, as I've said, 42 out of 51 years. I know I can be a part of bringing our state back to what it once was looked up for. We have some work to do. It's not going to happen overnight. I know that. And I know it takes more than one voice. From fishing on Green Bay at my grandparents' cottage in Dykesville to traveling the state with my dad's fast pitch softball career, I've been all over. I've seen all the different areas and how beautiful our state is. And again, I feel that our District 1 issues are not just, something that is a District 1 issue. It's statewide in a lot of communities. Being a businesswoman, I have learned that putting smart people around me has made me a better person. Along with your voices, I will always be seeking education from the many endorsements I've received and continue to reach out to community leaders and reach out across our state when needed. On the right and the left side of the party, we need to make sure, again, that we all are using our education, our experiences in life to help represent our districts. I know how to get things done. I walk the walk, I talk the talk. I'm a speaker of truth, and I think, again, this is what's being lost in our government right now, is speaking the truth and also acknowledging what is being spoken by your voters. We need to get back to listening and talking. We need to know it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable, in the great words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a great woman that we lost yesterday. We need leadership, again, that can walk the walk, talk the talk. I know it can be difficult being a leader sometimes. However, always speaking the truth has to be our path forward. This is something, again, that I've done throughout my life. It's not always the easiest path, but I like to know what other people are thinking when you do speak the truth. It's good, again, to reach out to find out what it is we need to do to embed ourselves and our district and our state. We must vote to change our ways of suppressing anyone who appears to look or choose or not have the same beliefs as us or lifestyles. No one person is more important than the other. I know without my people, I'm no one, but with my people, we can be unstoppable. And this is what I'm going to carry to Madison. I want to say that Joel and I do differ in some areas, but again, you're just going to have to look into both of our backgrounds, see what we've done in our life and our work, and know that I'm going to always fight for voters. I'm going to fight for everyone in our district. And I really think, again, this is what we're voting for November 3rd. We have a census coming out, and if we don't vote the way we feel right now, for over 50% of us, we're going to have the same that we've been having. We don't want another 10 years of the way the state is going and the way that we've been representative. I invite you to vote for me. My name is Kim DeLaura Jensen. I look forward to bringing your voice to Madison and fighting for education, healthcare, environment, and a living wage for Wisconsin voters. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, candidate Kim DeLaura Jensen. I'd like to pause for just a moment and point out something about the screen that you may be seeing now. It says candidates for Door County Treasurer, and that is not what these two candidates are running for. That is a typo that a couple of us looking at these slides missed. We had a forum for county treasurer earlier this election cycle. It should state candidates for Wisconsin Assembly District 1. I wanted to acknowledge that and apologize for that. And now we'll go to candidate Joel Kitchens for his closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. As I said in the beginning, serving as your representative in the state assembly has been, the greatest honor of my life. And when I walk into the Capitol, I continue after 6 years to be in awe that I am so lucky to be able to represent this area. In my office, I have a gallery of pictures from this district, and virtually everyone that visits my office looks at that gallery, their jaw drops, and they just say, "Man, you are so lucky to represent that area," and I truly am. Again, we are a very split district. It couldn't be any more purple than it is. So to do this job effectively, you have to be able to work with people from both sides. And I have done that. I've met with everyone. I think that I have responded to every email that I get. If people want to discuss a question, as long as people are civil, I will talk to them about any issue. And I think it's shown in that I've been recognized, again, by groups that typically don't support Republicans. I was named conservation champion by the Lake Michigan stakeholders, for instance. The year before they gave me that award, they gave it to Tammy Baldwin, so hardly a right-wing group. I think that I have my biggest focus, because it's what's so important to the area, my biggest focus probably has been on environmental issues. And again, we've made great strides, but we have a long way to go. You know, there's no doubt about that. And I will continue to work on that. And educational issues, we have not talked about that as much as maybe I would have liked today. But, you know, that too has been a great interest of mine. You know, going back to my years on the school board, I was the co-chair of the Blue Ribbon Commission on school funding. Just to touch on that very briefly, the biggest problem that we have with our school funding system is the way that the funding formula affects districts that have declining enrollment, which is every district in our area. Because when you lose one student, you don't lose $10,000 worth of expense. So I have a bill that was written to address that, and that will be coming forward again next session, and I hope to get that done. There were a number of other bills that I did. There was a bill to make access to birth control make birth control more readily available, I guess, to women. And that one, there were several bills that I had written that I think were very important bills that, because of the pandemic, the Senate never ended up taking those up. But I will be bringing those bills back as well. So I think I have written bills that are, you know, cross the lines typically between what's Democrat and Republican, and I have been able to work with both sides on that. You know, I think my background as a veterinarian could not have prepared me any better than what it did. I mean, first of all, you can't be a veterinarian without being compassionate and working with people and understanding the emotions of people. It gave me tremendous, it helped me tremendously from a business background and understanding what small businesses deal with, and, you know, and doing a payroll and all of that kind of thing. The reason I left veterinary medicine was because I realized that this was a full-time job, being in the state assembly. When I got elected, I thought, well, I'll continue to work a little bit as a vet, but it became readily apparent that to do this job properly, it is a full-time job, more than a full-time job. And I know Kim has mentioned how, well, she has often this, you know, we don't meet in the summers. Well, that's sort of like saying that, you know, I could be on the Packers because I don't have to work on Sundays, I can play the games. What you see in those sessions, those floor sessions, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the work that we do. And every single day I'm working to help constituents, to communicate and all that kind of thing. Even when we're not in session, I easily put in 40 hours a week. And I think, you know, you can argue whether this should be a full-time position, but the fact is the taxpayers are paying for a full-time position, and they're paying for benefits, and that's what they deserve, is someone that's willing to put that kind of work into the job. And I think I've done that. Again, I look forward to hearing from you, because the ideas that I get when I write legislation come from the people of the First Assembly District. Most of my bills is because somebody called me and pointed out a problem, and we worked together to try to find a way to fix it. So I look forward to continuing to hear from people, whether they vote for me or not, and to come up with those great ideas to better our state. Because I wasn't born in Wisconsin, but it is the best state in the country. You know, growing up, we moved a lot. I'm in Wisconsin because I love Wisconsin. It's the best state in the country, and I want to continue to work for the people of this district. And I thank you for your support in the past, and I hope you'll vote for me again. So thank you.
Thank you, candidate Joel Kitchens. And thank you both. Thank you both for participating this morning. Thank you for being willing to run for this important office and for serving if elected.
Thank you.
I wanted to go on to the next screen, and it's not allowing me to do that for some reason. So I believe I can make the final remarks without changing the screen. I want to remind everyone who might be viewing that the general election is on November 3rd. You can check or update your voter registration or request an absentee ballot by going to myvote.wi.gov or by contacting your municipal clerk. Be sure to follow all of the instructions carefully. If you're voting absentee, Try to mail the ballot at least a week before election or drop it off with your municipal clerk. If necessary, voters can register at their polling places on election day. A recording of this forum will be made available to the public on the League of Women Voter Door County website, which is leagueofwomenvotersdoorcounty.org. It will also be placed on the League of Women Voters Door County Facebook page. It may also be broadcast on local cable channels. The League will reach out to District 1 media outlets to encourage the public to view the recording prior to voting. We ask all voters to spread the word and encourage others to listen to the candidates to help inform their vote. Thank you all for participating, and thank those of you watching for viewing this forum for the two candidates for Wisconsin State Assembly District 1, sponsored by the League of Women Voters Door County and the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. I'll be stopping the recording.